So Jim Rutherford has acknowledged what we already knew, that there's no good solution for the drama in Vancouver. We're joined by Craig Button and Jamie McLennan. And Craig, let's start with you. You were a GM, so map us through exactly what you think the Canucks should be doing right now.
Well, I think Jim Rutherford laid it right out. You know, this idea that there wasn't a rift, there was some reports out there trying to dispel that. Well, Jim Rutherford came out and he laid it bare that there is a rift. That's number one. But more to that, Mark, is there a couple things after that that really struck me. Number one, he talked about the fact that he wants to put them back into a contending place. So he's basically looking at his team and saying, we're not a contender with this situation. That's number two. Number three, he framed it around Quinn Hughes. He said, Quinn Hughes might be ready for a retool. He's not ready for a rebuild. We want Quinn Hughes to be here forever, and if we go to a rebuild, he won't be. I thought that was very, very interesting by Jim Rutherford, laying it out in that manner. So he said that, you know, it's not a good situation. We've known that. He acknowledged that now. And now as you try to move forward, it's not so much about what you do now. The fact that Jim talked about it being a situation where he's got to put him back into the contending spot, and that he doesn't necessarily have to trade either of these players before the trade deadline, tells me that Jim is taking a longer view of this solution rather than a shorter view.
And you know what? The way I look at it is they still have to get something sorted out. That's the bottom line is. If you've got to find a way, Craig, is to sort this out. And I said this yesterday, you've got to get your house in order. That's the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. Yes, you've acknowledged there's a rift. So what are you going to do about it? And I guarantee you, and Craig, you could speak to this, every manager has called with a solution saying, hey, I'll take that player off your hands for pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest challenge right now for Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin is I guarantee you there's lots of friendly managers that have reached out and said, no problem, I can help you with your problem. Mm-hmm. And I will get rid of maybe something that I have in my house to get rid of. So that's the biggest challenge for the Vancouver Canucks is there might not be a perfect fit based on what could be coming back.
Yeah, and Jamie, as you point out, everyone knows the Canucks have to make a move. So would you prefer to trade Pettersson, Miller, or maybe both?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge is, and I would ask the question to anybody, especially Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, is what is the return? Because you're not trading top-tier players just to move them out of your organization. What you're doing is you're doing it with a plan. If the plan is to retool on the fly, then maybe you get some younger players and picks for them. Or if you want to just continue to push, because believe me, they can make the playoffs with what they have, then the return is the biggest question. I don't know if you move both of them. You have to decipher what is the problem, and if moving one, taking one out of the dressing room is the proper way forward, then you decide who you want to keep and who you want to move away from. But the biggest challenge and the answer from me is who are you getting back to make your organization better today and for the future?
Yeah, Jamie, you're exactly right. And it's not so much who you would prefer to trade. The whole goal for the manager here is to do what's best for the organization. And and what will make your team a contender. That Jim Rutherford's words, and that's obviously the goal. I will share an experience with you, Mark and Jamie, that I went through, and I wasn't very smart about it. So it's one of what I would call a word of caution. So we had a situation in Calgary where there was a rift between our coach and Marc Savard. And I loved Marc Savard. And it came to a point where, well, we can't keep going along like this and can't keep going along like this. So we ended up trading Marc Savard. There were some financial considerations in it. But we traded Marc Savard for this, nothing. And at the end of the day, I failed the organization. Why? Because it wasn't about dealing with the situation. I didn't do what was best for the organization. And what I should have been able to do and what I should have done was said, wait a second here. This is not right. This is not good. And we got to get the house in order, Jamie, your terms. But at the same time, we still got to do what's best for the organization. Yeah, I solved the problem, but I didn't help the organization. That's exactly the situation that Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford cannot find themselves in.
Well, the important date on the circle, on the calendar right now, Trade Center. Friday, March 7th is the date to watch, especially in Vancouver.